How much wood could Hollywood would if Holly only could? Find out when we talk about Cool World.
I don't want to see an ordinary film. I want to see something extraordinary.
Your sacrifice completes my sanctuary of 1,000 testicles.
You ever feel as if your mind had started to erode?
Let's rock indeed. Welcome to 1000 Wives of Weird, a podcast that is a celebration of weird film. I'm Brad Hefner, and unfortunately absent again is Billy Martell, but I have a great guest with me today, someone I've wanted to get on the show for a while, and when I knew Billy was going to be out for a bit, I started thinking of people I wanted to talk to, and before I could even reach out to her, she messaged me and said, "You guys ever cover any Bakshi?" It's like, no, we haven't. So thank you, Elyse Rintleman, for coming on the show and bringing this hot mess of a movie.
Of course, it's my pleasure. This is a movie that's been on my heart for a while to revisit, just the kind of haunted the back of my brain for many years. The first time I watched it, I had a 102 or 103 degree fever, and knowing nothing about it, I was just like, oh, Brad Pitt, that actor everybody knows. And animation, I saw people, like, just a very quick Google search made it seem like, oh, it's adjacent to Roger Rabbit, there's hybrid animation, live action stuff. This will be interesting to watch when I'm sick and delirious. And I didn't realize what was in store, because watching the movie on its own will kind of make you feel like you have a fever. So
Absolutely.
Watching it when you have a fever, I genuinely, like, I'll bring up some of the specifics of, like, memories that triggered when I watched the movie again.
I cannot wait to hear the fever dreams that Cool World inspired.
Yeah, it was quite the experience, but altogether definitely made more sense. As much sense as this movie could make, it made more sense to me this time, for sure.
Your brain wasn't being simmered by your body heat.
Yes, yeah.
Very briefly, Cool World is about an animated world that a couple humans get into, and
oh boy, do they get into it.
Oh man, they get into it so hard. Yeah, and then things happen. I didn't even think that I was not expecting it to be hard to describe, because on paper it's like
really hard.
So yeah, it's sort of a Roger Rabbit thing that mixes live action with animation, and the people interact, and yeah, but we're gonna walk you through this, like she said, a fever dream of a movie. But before we do, Elyse, would you recommend Cool World?
I would recommend it to a very specific type of person who has a very specific type of patience. I will say, just overall impressions, I came away from it really enjoying it, which kind of blew my mind. I think going in with the expectation that it was going to be, like, kind of shoddily made, that there had been just so much studio interference. Like, reading up on it before watching it, I was like, oh, it wasn't just me. Like, this was a shit show of a movie.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
So expecting it to make totally, like, no sense at all, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed watching it. I would recommend it if you're if you're listening to this podcast, I would definitely recommend it. Is the way to approach it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. This is a weird, hot mess, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to. That last half hour is a bit of a slog. Like, yeah. Once it drops off, but the Ralph Bakshi animation and even, like, his stills and stuff are gorgeous. I sort of said this on the After Last Season episode. Like, I'm not a big guy who's like, oh yeah, you need to smoke some weed and watch this movie, or you need to, like, but, like, watch this movie and don't smoke weed, but, like, huff paint, or like get real drunk, and just, like, there's so much stuff going across the screen at any one time that, like, even if you're not paying attention to the movie, it's just like I'm watching madness for, like, an hour of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Do some like oil diffusers, but maybe spray a little bit of like athlete's foot spray in there. Really get it dusted up in the air. I think that'll get you in the mood for Cool World.
All right, let's walk through this. Well, let's talk about the background a little bit. Ralph Bakshi is a name you might have heard, big animator. His breakthrough thing was Fritz the Cat, an X-rated animated movie based on the R. Crumb strip. He did Wizards, Lord of the Rings, Ice and Fire. This is my first Bakshi as far as I know. Have you seen anything else?
I've seen the Bakshi Lord of the Rings. I did have somebody in college stumble across Wizards. We talked about watching it, but I don't think we really ever committed. But I was aware of it. I watched clips of it, I think. I was aware of Bakshi's reputation as kind of like an underground artist who didn't really end up breaking into the mainstream like he wanted to. And as a kid, I saw Lord of the Rings and thought it was like a normal movie for some reason. But that's really about it.
Yeah, this is, like I said, my first. I have Wizards, just haven't watched it. And Bakshi was sort of like late 60s, late 70s. But in the late 80s and 90s, Bakshi had a bit of a reemergence. And with the success of Roger Rabbit, that paved the way for Cool World. Bob Hoskins must be proud. This was originally supposed to be a live-action animated horror movie. The character that we will later know as Jack Deebs goes into the comic world he created, impregnates a cartoon woman, they have a child, and the child goes to seek revenge in the real world on his father, which sounds like an amazing movie.
Sounds fucking perfect.
It is. It's the perfect movie. I think that's what Orson Welles was trying to do with Citizen Kane, but the technology was not there, so he made this dumb sled movie. I
kind of love the idea of Cool World having technology. Air quotes.
We'll get into the aesthetic in a bit, but so as with many movies, especially movies where it's like, oh, there's some cool stuff here, but it's not going the distance, there was studio interference, and Bakshi's idea was rewritten by two dudes who wrote Poltergeist. Which I don't know why, but that's like so bizarre and funny to me.
They wanted what they wanted. They wanted children to suffer. Is what they wanted. That's why they got the Poltergeist guys. The kings of taking a script that should have been pitched only to adults and convincing parents and families that maybe they could watch it as a family and traumatizing children.
Yes. Well, Kim Basinger was apparently also a part of this shift because she, at a meeting, she told Ralph Bakshi, like, I think it would be great if I could show this to children in hospitals. And Bakshi was just like, again, the man who made an X-rated animated film was like, oh no, I'm in the wrong place. Which they still didn't create that movie. Like, you can't show this to a child in a hospital.
It's still... half of the movie is like she's trying to get fucked. Like that's literally that's the most important plot point in the movie before the climax. Is that Hollywood is trying to get fucked so that they can cross a barrier between worlds. Like I can't like that is the form that the movie was in when she was commenting on it. So like the idea that you could present that to children. I just don't understand.
Maybe Kim Basinger is more fucked than we think. Like maybe she just
maybe.
So let's get into this plot. As we mentioned before, I didn't know the backstory before I went in, so I was like, oh yeah, Cool World, Ralph Bakshi, rated PG-13. What? And I was very taken aback. As was I by the very aggressive early 90s soundtrack, just right out of the gate. And the fact that this starts out as a period piece.
Yeah.
It's 1945 in Las Vegas, and our fighting boys are coming home at McCarran Airfield, which I know because of New Vegas.
God salute them.
And that includes, these fighting boys include Brad Pitt, Hollywood heartthrob.
Was he a heartthrob at this point?
I feel like after, because this was after Thelma and Louise, so maybe he had like that cowboy vibe going on. But I don't know. I think he looks.
From what I read, he was supposed to originally have
Gabriel Byrne's part.
The studio didn't want to bank on him yet because he wasn't like A-list.
God, he wasn't a Gabe Byrne.
It's just like funny. Yeah, it's funny going back and being like, oh, he was the one they didn't want to bank on for the future. You know, that guy who literally is like still starring in action movies.
How do you feel about Brad Pitt?
I mean, as a person, I don't want to comment on. Okay,
yeah,
I think he's a very enjoyable presence.
He is.
Having just seen Bullet Train and being kind of underwhelmed by it, I at least enjoyed watching him have fun and enjoy himself.
He seemed to be having a lot of fun. It's nice to watch millionaires have fun on screen. I mostly just loved, what's his name? The black gentleman.
Brian Tyree Henry?
That's it. I love him and everything. So He's much fantastic. I can't remember his name. Joyfully reunites with his mother, Brad Pitt does. Mm-hmm. And back at home, Brad Pitt has changed into a pretty snazzy suit. Mm-hmm. And I was super glad he called her Ma because I was unsure of the relationship between these two. And then I was less glad when he called her Ma because they have a weird chemistry. Did you feel it at all?
I had seen the beginning of this movie before, so okay. I think it had happened so long in the past that I was just like, oh, they're mother and son, and I wasn't thinking about it. But now that you say that, I can definitely see it a little bit. He's definitely like, hey, babe, like, come get on my motorcycle, wrap your arms around my waist. Like, he's into it a little bit.
His sexual charisma just can't be contained, and it's just like lashing out at everybody. But he pulls his mother away from the cooking, and they don't turn off the stove or anything. Oof. And I can only imagine that the house is burning down as he shows her his brand new motorcycle. Here's a bizarre thing that my OCD did during this movie is as they're walking out, we see an American flag in the background. I rewound several times to make sure that flag had the right number of stars. And it did.
Sometimes you got to check. They might have been slipping some treason under your nose, you know?
Exactly.
That's what treason is.
It is having an anachronistic flag in a movie. That's the only thing that treason was. Benedict Arnold, first person to do in America. Brad Pitt, who is called Frank, and his ma go for a ride on the shiny red motorcycle, and some drunk carousers are leaving the desert gambling casino, and they plow right into Frank and ma. And this causes Frank to have a PTSD flashback where he thinks he's in the war. He's crawling through the sand. How did this work for you? Because I kind of bought it.
I think the whole opening of this movie is like genuinely very promising and fairly, like, for what it is, compelling. I will say there is a moment that I feel like I don't understand why they didn't like do another take where he's having this flashback moment where he's like, there's mines over there, there's a gunner over there, and then he sees his mom and he's just like, that's my mom. She's dead right there. And then he's like, oh, there's a gun. And there's just this weird moment where it feels like he's not really acting, like he's just kind of acknowledging where he is and then like lapses back into it, that I was a little confused by.
I didn't notice, but maybe Bakshi is just like not used to directing people. He's just used to like making cartoons fiddle-faddle around.
We'll make him frown in post.
He rotoscopes a frown over his mouth. The cops arrive. Cut to a cartoon man who is using a thing called a spike to open a portal into our world. Mm-hmm. Also, Frank seemed to be doing pretty well before, but now he is convulsing and dying.
Yeah.
But he's eventually zapped into the cartoon world, being confronted with two hulking doodle brutes. He shouts for his mother, and the little scientist cartoon man from before makes the portal bigger, tearing at the edges like paper. He is disturbed by Frank shouting and goes to investigate. Now, this character is named Doc Whiskers, and he is voiced by Maurice LaMarche, who is he does a solid half of the voices in the movie, and he's done a ton of voices. You heard he was Brain on the Animaniacs, Egon on Real Ghostbusters, and Calculon, Kiff, and Morbo in Futurama.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he's legit. So we're about like 10 minutes into this movie, if that, and this is such a, even though I knew it was going to be cartoons and people, this is so jarring and sudden. Whiskers gets in between the goons. When Frank asks what they are, Vincent says, "They're doodles!" And Brad Pitt says, "Cartoons?" Okay, first problem with this movie. Why does Whiskers say they're doodles and not weird doodles?
I'm not going to say his character is fleshed out or that it makes sense what he does in the movie at any point. I don't know what's going on. But the one thing I think about him is that he's definitely a bit of an elitist, if not like some kind of Third Reich mad scientist of the cartoon world who imagines himself to be intellectually above, his ilk. So I could totally believe him being like, they're doodles. I'm going to the real world and I'm going to be Vegas Vinny.
I'm a more human-looking doodle, so I'm superior. He was brought over under Operation Papercool. We got him from the Nazis. We learned that Whiskers Spike was supposed to send Vincent Whiskers to Frank's world, but instead brought Frank to Whiskers. And Whiskers' reality is called the Cool World. Everyone always says the Cool World.
The cool one of the two.
Yes. But here's my question. If it has to say it's cool, is it really that cool?
No.
Seems like it's trying too hard. So Whiskers leads Frank away. There's a nice bit of probably the only good interplay of live action animation, whereas as Frank walks, circular lights come on above him as Whiskers leads him away. Just some random thoughts. I'm glad someone animated oxygen in the Cool World for Brad Pitt, just in case.
I missed this. Oh, you mean like just in the quality of the world, there is oxygen.
Yeah, that he can breathe.
Gotcha.
Also that this 3D monstrosity can exist in a world of 2D things.
Yeah, they certainly don't seem to be interacting with him like he's some eldritch horror beyond their understanding.
No, I just kept thinking of Flatland while I watched this, Edward Abbott's Flatland, which I'm sure was Bakshi's intention. Frank tells Whiskers he was a soldier, and Whiskers says he could be useful after Whiskers is gone. They want to install a military dictatorship over Cool World.
But not really. They only seem to be concerned with enforcing one rule, but we'll get there.
Yeah, there is literally only one rule in Cool World.
Only one. And one cop, I think. There's poppers, but only one cop.
You're right. I was confused by that too, but you're right. The poppers and the cops seem to be distinct. There's two nails.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
Jump to 1992 Las Vegas.
I just want to say the shot where Whiskers is like holding his hand, walking through the darkness with the circular lights, combined with this intense zoom in shot on the prison. I think this is like one of the coolest like little stretches of the movie where you're like, oh, there's something visually interesting going on here.
Absolutely.
Before it kind of falls away a bit, but
yes. Although, like I said before, anytime, especially backgrounds, I love Bakshi's art. That was the main draw for me. And like you said, we're going to prison. And boo, not set totally in the 40s, but yay, Gabriel Byrne. And I think Gabriel Byrne is a terrific actor. I noted this later. I made this joke before I looked up this bit of trivia. I called Gabriel Byrne the boring man's Willem Dafoe. And apparently Willem Dafoe was the first choice for Jack Deeps.
Oh, shit.
which I can see easily.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Fuck. So
I can't fuck a cartoon.
Holly,
that's Frank Sinatra Jr. You can't just go up there.
There's too many possibilities. It honestly hurts to think about. I just want to move on.
Sure. But Gabriel Byrne was in Miller's Crossing, The Usual Suspects, and he's everyone's least favorite character in Hereditary. But except for me, shit. I thought...
Yeah, he's
the dad. I thought he tried in Hereditary. I thought he did his best, but I'm in the minority there. Gabriel Byrne is in his prison cell, drawing a picture of Hollywood in his cell at a whole-ass artist desk that they just gave him. And he credits this character to helping him get through prison. As he's drawing, he hears Holly's voice saying it's time to come to her, and hands reach out through the paper and try to grab Jack Deebs. The hands don't get him, but he's still electricityed into Cool World. The rules of passage to and from Cool World are non-existent.
No, especially it's very weird because it's our initial interaction with Cool World. There's a mad scientist, there's machinery. He's talking about how he's like setting this new precedent with being able to open these portals, and then they're just like, no, you can do it for any reason.
Just think about it. Or did the creation of the spike? No, it still doesn't make sense. So he goes to Cool World, and we get our first exterior shot of Cool World, and it is a frightening hellscape that is not so much cool as it is nightmarish.
Really is like way more H.R. Giger inspired than I remembered it. Like this is like an alien progenitor race hellscape.
My favorite thing is all the buildings are like faces. It's so cool looking. I love it. And like, to me, this is cool, but if you were to ask an average person on the street, like, hey, what's your idea of a cool world? It would not be this hyper-violent wasteland that is just where death seemingly doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it really makes a lot more sense when, it was pitched to be like an actual horrifying hellscape. Yeah. That would, this hybrid creature growing up in it would come to loathe and want to escape.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense looking at it. Either way, though, it is just like really delicious in a horrific way.
It is. It's great. Here's a missed opportunity for this movie. All throughout, I just kept thinking of 90s FMV adventure games, which the poor quality of this movie really conveys. It feels like a Tex Murphy or something. I would have killed for an FMV Cool World. That's what this should have been.
It should have been. It's such a missed opportunity. I mean, I looked up the Cool World. I went through the Cool World like SNES game.
There's an SNES Cool World game.
Yeah, it's honestly awful. You play as Gabriel Byrne's character, and it's pretty much just like you have a punch, and then this isn't really an ability he gets until the end of the game, but you kind of have this arm that just extends upward to like pull you up buildings and stuff. It didn't look very fun to play.
Well, of course not.
There's too many similarities to like the worst parts of Battletoads, where you're just suddenly in a vehicle that's careening through like mouths opening and closing,
which is
the sides of buildings.
Which is true to a later part of this film.
It is. But looked... I'm not sure if the person I was watching was just really bad at the game or...
Oh, so you didn't play it, you watched a video.
I watched it. I would have loved to have played it, but yeah, honestly, an FMV game would have been perfect, because it's so much about just like exploring backdrops and interacting with characters.
That sort of low-quality graphical resolution would work perfectly with sort of the not great compositing we're going to see a lot of in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Deebs finds himself in a nightclub where everyone is, in probably the most off-putting animation in the film, they're just sort of like jerking back and forth these wolves in zoot suits, and
Yeah. Wooga wolves, like with eyes that
yes,
shouldn't-
exactly.
they, like took out that part of the animation, so they're just kind of like lunging forward over and over again.
But they're watching Holly dance, Hollywood, who we
Oh
were
yeah.
introduced to in Hollywood, if only Holly could. We get this beautiful, again, nightmarish still shot, non-animated, of a crowd. I can't even describe it. It's just beautiful. I love it. And I also enjoy the animation of Holly dancing, even though it's just like a couple steps above like heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, I don't know, it looks pretty good.
It is definitely the thing they put the most time into in the movie.
Yes.
Is
That
like,
is.
because it's not even like, oh, we just have to make these dance sequences with Holly good. Like, I'm pretty sure this is how Holly's like default way of traveling around the world is.
It is. We see it later.
She just has to go dance around. That's her only means of travel, except for one time she does drive a car. But
a car with some luscious hams.
Yeah,
we will get there. But no, Holly is very much a blonde bombshell. She's chesty, always in very sort of not like BDSM fetish, but like sort of just male gazy costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And then none of that matters because Deebs goes back to his cell. We meet Sparks, or Sparky, another person with a crush on Holly. He tosses some ugly children some wooden nickels with faces on them. The nickels come alive and attack the kids and then return to Sparks. This has nothing to do with anything. I just love this sequence.
Yeah, it's amazing and really makes you think it's going to be relevant later in the story.
I just love that, like, Ralph Bakshi was like, yeah, the old wooden nickel gag. That's never going to go out of style.
The sentient wooden nickel gag.
Oh my god, Dennis the Menace pulled it so many times.
Dennis imbued these nickels with painful, suffering existence. Oh, Dennis.
Mr. Wilson just gets his fingers chewed off by wooden nickels. Frank shows up at Holly's club where she's singing a Marilyn Monroe tune from the movie Let's Make Love. So apparently Doodles can see things in the real world.
Yeah, she does not explain how she saw it, but she does say that she saw it, like in a way where it seems like it's contraband.
Oh, okay.
At least that was the impression I got. She's like, I did manage to see it, and he's kind of like, you shouldn't be watching that live action shit.
Yeah, that's never explored more. We never.
No.
The Doodles seem to have some idea that another world exists because Whiskers, when Frank first comes over, is like, yes, we're real. We might not seem it, but we are. A big criticism of this film, and my biggest criticism, is that it makes no sense.
Yeah, and not even in a fun way. It tries to insist it has rules at points.
We learn Holly's one motivation: to get everything she's ever wanted. And what that is, currently unspecified.
Yeah. Holly
is the worst. Like, and she's sort of designed to be the worst, but not in the way I think Bakshi wanted her to be the worst.
Maybe. She's an interesting character to interact with because, like, she is inherently, like, offensive as, like, the most important female character in this story, aside from, you know...
Lynette.
Okay, I'm glad you remember her name because I did not. Her entire purpose is, you know, to dance around as sexually as possible.
A sexy cartoon like a Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah, like, but it's so bad though that it honestly pushed beyond that discomfort for me, where I kind of was interested in, like, I started to feel her as a genuine character, as someone who is just like so committed to getting what she wants, that like this presentation of just being inherently sexual all the time was like it was almost played like knowingly, because like the amount of dancing is so much. It feels like you can hear her internally saying like, God, I just need to get what I want so I can stop fucking dancing. Like, it just seems like she's very aware of the gaze, even if she is also partially created by it, which I don't know, like, she's horrible, but there was some part of me that was like, yeah, fucking bring this guy into your world and fuck him. Like, you deserve that shit. You get ogled by like these horny wolves in zoot suits all day. Like, that shit.
And
Be
her
real, have a job or something.
Which we will learn that jobs are a thing in Cool World for whatever reason. I was trying to see some like you're saying, like it goes so far beyond it. When she does get what she wants, she just uses it to get more attention.
That's true. That's true.
Frank is there because of Deeb's little visit to Cool World. Now it seems like Frank is the only Noid, which is what they call humans. Never explained.
Nope.
So you'd think this would be a bigger deal, but I guess not. Although we're later going to learn that he's not the only Noid, which is never explored. Yeah, it's a goddamn mess.
It really is.
Holly takes Frank to her exposition shrine and tells him about Vegas Vinny,
Right.
who made the spike and crossed over to become a successful casino and hotel owner. Everyone's dream.
So many aspects of this when we get to the end. I'm just going to talk about how much this doesn't make sense to me, but the story
I can't wait.
Vinny, yes.
The legend of Vegas Vinny.
The 40-year-old, 50-year-old legend of Vegas Vinny, maybe.
And here's why I correct myself. Holly does have one motivation, that is to go to the real world. And I don't, like I said, a lot of things happen in the foreground of this movie that's random violence or visual noise or whatever by animated characters. I don't often note it because it's so constant. But here, we get a few seconds of a disembodied, white, translucent, snarling dog head floating across the screen. And I loved it.
Did you read up at all on why that was?
No, I didn't see anything about that.
So apparently, in the act of trying to create the world in their animation studio at Paramount, Bakshi would just some days tell his animators that they had to fill space in the movie and fill the world with nonsense, and would not tell them scenes that they were going to be animating over, and would just say, like, animate something. I don't care what it is, we'll put it in the movie. So it's really interesting, especially with it being a lot of these things happening over these like Brad Pitt exposition dumps, and then a little bit when Gabriel Byrnes is there. It feels a little like almost Tyler Durden-esque to me. Just sitting there having a conversation, and then it's just like frame perfect just appears on screen, and there's a bunch of people scrambling around, and then it just disappears. It's not even like they run off frame, like the animation just frame for frame stops, and you're like, it can't be like a diegetic part of the world unless it's being like projected on a screen, and then that projection cuts off. It doesn't make any sense. Like the idea that there would be like so many caricatures of like men with axes chasing women, but at like nipple height on people while these scenes are happening, it doesn't make any sense.
It's insane. It's a fever dream. It's just like, it's a fever dream, and it's honestly, I love it. I love it. Now that I know why it happens, I love it even more. It's this weird like William Burroughs shit. That's amazing. Holly comes on to Frank. Frank rebuffs her advances. Holly talks about how Noid dames can feel things and have power and can taste things. So, is there no sensation in Cool World? then why do people drink or smoke or
Try to fuck.
try to fuck or like do anything?
I cannot answer that.
Okay.
I wish I could. Really.
Sorry to put you on the hot seat. We learned that Jack Deebs thinks he invented Cool World because he made a comic series called Cool World that features Holly. And we get some vague answers and vague answer about this later. Still is just a thrown away part of the script, pretty much. Deebs gets out of prison and, like any comic nerd, goes straight to he goes home and then he goes to the comic shop. But as a comic nerd, I know that Deebs is getting a new Teen Titans, and I thought I saw a new Gods title. Anyway, Cool World is a huge deal, apparently. Like, everybody loves it. He published it from prison. It's one of the biggest comics in the world. We also find out that Jack Deebs murdered a man.
Yeah.
Who was sleeping with his wife. Not important. Not important to the rest.
Things. Important info dumps that seem like they will change characters' lives or the world are not extrapolated upon at all.
No, this is just like, he didn't need to be in prison. Like, he didn't need to be a murderer. Like, even though, like, the murderer thing could be like, oh, he has to redeem himself, but by making it he killed the man who was sleeping with his wife, that makes him seem like
it's
the
justified.
Exactly, like Timothy Oliphant.
I watched this movie with my girlfriend, which was very fun. I did not.
Did she enjoy it?
We had a good time.
That's awesome.
This was her favorite scene in the entire movie because Jack Deebs is getting his comic signed by people in the shop. There's a signed comic of his up in the shop for sale for a higher price. And then for some reason, at the end of this scene, when we've gotten the exposition that we need, he killed a man. That's why he was in prison, and he's looking longingly at Hollywood. This man looks at him and reaches a comic book over his shoulder, and he says, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Jack Deebs," and he signs it. And I genuinely, something about this man's performance stuck in our brains because it really felt like this guy wandered on set and genuinely was just like, I don't know why I'm in line and why people are signing these comic books. And I just, part of me really wished he was a bigger part of this narrative, but, you know, I'm okay if that's not the case.
No, I love this gentleman too. And it's so jarring. I was like, okay, that has to be some old comic guy I don't recognize or some animator or some important cameo. No, it's just an extra, a featured extra. God knows why it happened, but it's there and it's beautiful. It's very wabi-sabi, finding beauty in the flaws.
I think maybe in line with like the really convoluted characterization of him, you know, like killing somebody, so you're supposed to be like, oh, he's a dangerous person that needs to redeem himself, and, you know, like he also was justified, so you're supposed to feel good for him. This scene is like full of this stuff where everybody's like, you're so famous, we all know you, but then this character is like, I have no idea who you are, which is again two angles you can go with. Like the stardom nature of a character is like they have to deal with, you know, the futility of not being known and like how much of their identity has been staked on that versus like I'm overwhelmed with fame. And it's like, why are these two themes that are kind of opposing in the same theme or in the same scene? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It's not elaborated upon later. It's like many things in this film, pointless.
That's what I love to see, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's except in after last season, that was too much. I'm still back at home. Jack is brooding and gets electricityed back into Cool World again somehow. Seems like something Holly can just do.
Yeah, I wish they would have had her, you know, like over a smoking cauldron or
That
like
would have
at
been
a
great.
mirror. Just anything to like give us like, why does she have this power? Does she put in her like Marilyn Monroe VHS that like gives her the ability to transfer like, you know, lonely, unstable men to her dimension? I just give us something.
Something, anything to flesh out this world that it seems you want to build. But he meets some of his characters, or what he thinks are his characters, and they just torment him, which again is a great concept. Like, I love that. It's like, hey, I created you. I'm your master. And it's like, no, you're just some schmuck, and we're gonna torture you.
Yeah, part of it seems a little bit like, you know, I like the idea of a creator having to deal with the like real embodied presence of their like fucked up caricatures that are
Yeah.
like crazy,
Chaotic
like,
and violent. And
this is another scene that's like, it feels like it's touching on something. It feels like there's something interesting happening in the scene. The movie's kind of peppered with those where you're like, oh, this is like about something.
It's enough to keep you going for
Yeah.
a while until those things stop coming. Also, it's not helped that, again, really need to underscore this. Anytime a human interacts with a cartoon, looks like shit.
Yeah, there's not any real detail that's paid to like shadowing. I mean, part of researching this movie for me was also like, I went back to look at the behind the scenes for Roger Rabbit stuff, and they not only did they like hand animate every frame of animation over, you know, the actual cells, they also had to do it 4 times to do the lighting. Like, the amount of lighting passes they did was just insane. It was like 82,000 or some frames of animation for that movie. And you could definitely tell the difference from a movie that came out like 4 years earlier, and then to look
Something
at this.
like that.
And there's just like no semblance of even trying to match consistent lighting in any way.
It's embarrassing. Like, I can just imagine Ralph Bakshi at the premiere just sort of sinking down in his seat. Holly does the seduction routine on Jack, which for some reason includes burning him with a cigarette. She's into that rough play.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was in prison, Brad.
True. That's how they do it in the big house.
Yeah,
they also call it the big house in there. The cops show up for reasons not worth explaining, and Holly, Deebs, and Holly's weird, terrible friends get away in Holly's car, which has a fat, luscious ass.
It is one of those things where you're just kind of taking it in, only half realizing what's happening until you're like in the middle of it, because no other part of the car has like a face or a body part is anthropomorphized. It's just, you realize as like it's getting riddled with bullets and they're like bouncing off it and making it jiggle, that you like it's a little bit of a long play where you're like, oh my god, I like this is an ass. Like,
but we also don't see it that much, so it's sort of like, no, I imagine that it just looked like that, and like you're trying to catch it again.
It's a little gaslighty. It's a little like, I just want you to think, oh, that was just a car. Look at an ass.
No, baby, I didn't buy a car with an ass. You're dumb. But Deebs, despite being tormented and this place being an H.R. Giger nightmare hellscape, thinks Cool World is amazing. It's perfect. Yeah. And there's a chase scene where the cops pursue the ass car, set to, I only noted this because I love every word of this, set to the song Sex on Wheels, Wheels with a Z, by the group My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult.
I did not know that.
Amazing. What an amazing name for an orchestra.
Yeah.
I assume that's honestly, what they...
This sequence is amazing.
It's pretty fun.
I think it's a good chase. Like, it's a little thrilling. A little Looney Tunes in a good way.
Ralph Bakshi, for a while, he sort of denigrated the film because of the studio interference, but later he would say that he thought this was the best animation he ever did. And I have nothing to compare it to, so dead on, Ralph Bakshi. So after this chase, Frank meets up with his gal Lynette. And originally, when I first saw this, I thought Frank was trying to pick up a doodle sex worker.
Does seem like that. Really does seem like
that. It really does. But he's interrupted by his partner, Nails the Spider, voiced by Charlie Adler, who voiced Buster Bunny on Tiny Toon Adventures.
Oh, okay. I watched a little Tiny Toon Adventures.
Also, the Melon and Nut Merchant, separate roles, and Aladdin.
Oh.
And also, he's the voice of Harold from Fallout 1 and 2, which is what I know him from, aside from the other things.
Don't know the first two games.
Nails tells Frank that Deebs has been spotted again, and they head to the club. Outside of the club, again, I don't bring up what happens in the foreground much, but here there's a row of differently colored dancing skeletons. Yep. And in the background, there's a bulbous man with no legs, and I don't think any arms, just bouncing up and down along with them. And this
the classic joke, because he is a bouncer. He is.
Oh my god, I didn't get it.
Yep, yeah, he's a bouncer, keeping them from getting in.
That's. Oh man, if I were no, I feel bad that I didn't get it, but also not that funny.
It's not. One quick side note: in the SEN, the SNES game, this character is portrayed like almost exactly the same. Like, they want you to recognize this bouncer character, but he has legs. And I was really confused by this. Like, given that there's... I just, like, this is the only character in the whole movie who doesn't have legs, and he's bouncing, and his joke is that he's a bouncer. And then they take him and put him in the game and give him legs.
I can only imagine. I'm just picturing Ralph Bakshi, for whatever reason, supervising the SNES version of his creation, and just like not really being that hands-on, but he sees the finished product and he's like, "Oh my god, they massacred my boy!
They gave him legs!
They gave him legs! He's a bouncer!
What's he, a stander now?
A Walker Texas Ranger?" Yeah, we see these skeletons for a very short amount of time, but it's very striking. And as you mentioned before, Holly's sole means of transportation seemed to be dancing, because she go-go dances out of an alley with her friends and into the club. The bouncer tells Holly she has Deebs with her, and the bouncer tells Holly that no noids are allowed.
No noids.
Why? There is one other noid in existence. And it's going to turn out that noid is already inside, because when they do get in, Frank is waiting to bust Deebs.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this is really like if you went to a bar with like E.T. or something, and they were like, "No aliens," and they point to a sign that says "No aliens," and she's like, "What? Why? Like, when would this have been relevant ever? When did this policy get enacted?"
I was about to say I want to see this movie where kids try to take E.T. to a bar, but I guess that's basically just Paul. Remember the film Paul?
Yeah, I sure do. I mean, I remember that there was a film Paul and that I watched it.
That's basically where I'm at. Okay, and here we get the only explanation of how Deebs, quote unquote, created Cool World. Mm-hmm. He had visions and he draws them. Case closed. Jack has a fountain pen on him. Frank tells him that kind of thing is dangerous around here and demonstrates it by shooting some liquor into Nail's mouth with the pen. And Deebs doesn't get it. I don't get it either.
I don't, because he dips it into a bottle first. He takes the pen, dips it in a bottle, and then uses it to spray what I assume is liquor into Nail's mouth. And he's like, "Whoa!" And you're like, "Okay, so is this a squirt gun? Is that what you're showing me? Is this why it's dangerous?"
Makes no sense.
Maybe they're just trying to show that this pen interacts with the world, even though it's from reality. I don't know.
Yeah. And again, the question has to be asked, when has a fountain pen ever been encountered in Cool World? But here, as we've been alluding to over and over and over again, we find that there is only one rule in Cool World. And it is the oldest law in Cool World, established presumably by Cool Hammurabi. Here, Frank does allude that other Noids have been through Cool World. Not ever mentioned again. We don't even find out what the rule is here. I forgot.
But let's just,
what were you going to say?
I feel like there was a lot of like joke potential here with the like other Noids that pass through. You know, like depictions of like Charles Schultz, Jim Davis. You know, like people who have these brief moments of insanity, and now like fucking Garfield is like a slave to this man's pen. Like, I mean, that's what Roger Rabbit would have done. Which again, it sucks to compare the two, but
yeah.
World, I was just like, there's a lot of potential here for jokes that I feel like really go missed.
Jokes, any sort of meaning, any sort of plot, you could do so much with it. With this pen idea, it doesn't. Let's just reveal what the one rule of Cool World is that Noids cannot have sex with doodles.
This is
which sounds like,
everybody.
But now imagine you're Frank Harris. For the most part, you're the only Noid that exists in Cool World. And Cool World is a nightmare hellscape of constant violence and just terrible, terrifying things. And you spend 50 years here, and your only job is to keep people from fucking.
He is a professional blue baller. But he's also like no nutting himself.
Yeah, that's all he does. Is like
he's been trapped here for 50 years. I mean, like, well, part of me is interested in his perception of time because he has not aged in the past 50 years. He is exactly the same, which makes me think that maybe he's not quite aware of the passage of time. It doesn't feel like that long. I don't know, but has really just not relieved himself or had relations in a long time.
No, he has not.
You would think that he would like maybe start to feel a little sympathetic, like maybe a little weakened, but no, he is like, they won't fuck. He's, you know, he's a strong evangelical dad.
That's what I've always said about Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Whenever the paparazzis question me, that's what I always say.
Mm-hmm.
Deebs gets suddenly sent back to the real world for script convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Frank visits Lynette at her place. Lynette kisses him a bit, but he stops it because it can't go anywhere. And here's where I became very shocked, because David Bowie did an original song for this movie.
Wait, really?
Yes, called Real Cool World. I rented this through Amazon. That has the little x-ray thing, and that's the only reason I noticed it, and it blew my mind. And I
did not know that.
Yeah. Oh, a man wants to fuck a cartoon? Sounds groovy.
I feel like part of me wonders if he was in a state where he was like, I wonder if it's a bit of an autobiography, if you know what I mean. Fucked a few cartoons, puppets, you know. Whatever comes my way, you could call me a bit of a doodle myself.
Cool World. I called it Berlin. I'd like to imagine that David Bowie was at the premiere and just like real pleased with himself. Frank says he can't live without Lynette and doesn't want to go back to the real world, but he can't be with her. And then it's implied they're about to do something like naked snuggles or something.
Uh-huh.
But Nails interrupts and they hit the streets. And at this point, I noted
about how violent Brad Pitt is in this movie to women for no reason.
No, it did not register with me. Please
Part of me thinks it's part of the like noir shtick where he's like trying to play up the like the
I gotta
gruff
smack
TV
around some
detective.
mouthy
Yeah,
dames.
like exactly. It's playing into that a little bit, but because when he's interacting with Holly, that first scene, there's a couple times where they're talking, and their energy is just two people having a conversation about something that's important, but they're having a conversation, and then he'll just shove her on the couch. He'll like kind of like toss her up against the wall, and with Lynette, her name's Lynette. Okay, he keeps, and part of me wonders if this is genuinely because he's a violent character, or they just really did a bad job at blocking the scene around the animation. It seems like when he's like kind of reaching around her neck to like, I don't know, just be like, this is my girl, my dame.
Yeah, I can see it.
Seems like he's going for a chokehold sometimes. He's trying to wrestle her into a bit of like relational submission. It's a little aggressive.
I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, he's playing an archetype. It makes sense.
Yes, I've watched my fair share of noir, so maybe I was just like, oh yeah, that's how men in the 40s treated women. Yeah, of course, this is a documentary. And
You're
also
not wrong.
no, true. But I shouldn't be so flippant about it and accepting it's like, yep, that's how it went.
I mean, I listened to the Behind the Bastards podcast on John Wayne, and he sure did a lot of like hitting women in public, who then had to be like, "Gosh, I love him because now you're interviewing me." And,
yeah, John Wayne is the worst.
Yes, and I'm gonna lose work if I don't say that's just a part of our lovemaking.
And we should note that even though we revealed it to you, the movie has still not told us why Noids and Doodles can't fuck.
Mm-mm.
Except that maybe because of sensation issues, and Noid. Originally, I thought it was like because Noids couldn't come with Doodles, and Brad Pitt was just like, "No, if I can't get off, no one does." Deeb's. Like, that was my legitimate interpretation. Like, that was the only thing that made sense to me, because he was talking with Lynette about, like, oh, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, it's not going to... I was just like, is this all because, like, you can't come?
It's literally just his, like, ED insecurity. That's a really fucking good interpretation, honestly.
So, Deebs is zapped back to Cool World. Nails and Frank go to Holly's place, and it's a giant twisting skyscraper that Frank and Nails have to scale because the door won't let them in.
Another
They
really
make
cool
it. Oh yeah, it's great. Like, mostly for me the design of the building, but it's still some nice cartoon antics on the way up. Frank goes into Holly's place, and a real swinging party is going on, and Holly as ever is dancing, and it's almost like that song "All She Wants to Do Is Dance." Should have been part of the Cool World soundtrack.
Definitely.
And probably the worst cartoon effect, Brad Pitt smokes a cartoon cigarette and then
it's a joy to watch.
Puts it out on his sleeve for whatever reason.
Yeah, immediately. Not concerned about... I don't know if fire doesn't exist in Cool World.
Frank asks Holly where Deebs is. She says she doesn't know. Frank is about to leave when Holly tries to emasculate him, call him a wimp, and Frank just brushes it off. Frank tells Nails they have to find Deebs. Holly's unpleasant friends send Deebs up to Holly's place. Holly greets him, saying that Deebs likes looking at her. Holly takes Deebs to her bedroom, and we get a montage of a bunch of bizarre characters stopping in their tracks at this development, including a mother rabbit and her two rabbit girls who say, "Man is in the bedroom."
This is one of those... I want to know how they know. Is this like Truman Show where they all, like, the family gathers around at night around the TV to see like who Holly is fucking today? And like
maybe the Doodle Noid copulation has such an effect in like the energy resonance of Cool World that like everybody feels it if you're a doodle. Like it's just like we know it's coming.
We never meet. We never intend.
No, that is my holy oath. But Holly has gotten out of her skimpy outfit into a skimpier outfit, but she has also taken the time to put on gloves.
Yes.
Just something I noticed. Gloves that she's quickly going to take off. Holly is sexily taking off her gloves with her teeth. She's climbing on top of Gabriel Byrne seemingly several times, like it's a Jackie Chan movie, and we're seeing it from different angles. But meanwhile, her terrible friends are erecting piles of junk in order to watch the fucking. And it's this bizarre dissonance because the Hollywood and Gabriel Byrne stuff seems like it's really trying to be erotic and sensual. And meanwhile, there's this madcap Looney Tunes antics going on outside. It's not that I want it to be erotic. It is the year of our Lord 2022. If I wanted to see sexy cartoons, there are many avenues. But
yes.
I feel so bad for some poor young boy in like 94 is like, ooh, Cool World, this is gonna be sexy, and it's like, here it comes. It's like, no, I can't even concentrate because of the antics.
It is a tragedy that we can't get this scene to be taken seriously, you know.
No,
I think this should be a genuine romance, and I feel like the, you know, stacking a giant mountain out of elephants and suitcases and then falling down and then playing the exact same animation again is great and all, but you know, there's intimacy happening and we need to be respectful.
I travel around to high schools and I give this talk to kids from what is it now, like 10th grade to 12th grade, I think high schools are mostly, but I'm talking to these kids. I'm like, sex is to be respected, and this cut of Cool World that is not erotic as it should be is disrespectful to God.
It sure is. It sure is.
And we do see Deebs and Holly sort of softcore fuck where we don't see Deebs at all, but if you know, Holly's clearly writing a D word.
A Deeb.
Go balls, Deeb. That's what his bumper sticker says.
I entirely believe that.
You know what? I do too. Then there's an explosion, and Holly is turned into a human, and here we find out that is why they're not supposed to know each other biblically. And I watched this movie on my first watch in 2 parts, and I stopped right around here because it's about an hour in, about 50 minutes in. And when I picked the movie back up the next day, a few scenes later from this, I was like, Holly's human? When did that happen? How did that happen? I somehow missed this entire... I don't know if I blocked it out or what, but I was just like, did she look at the... Is it a magic mirror? I was rewinding. I was like, she's looked in the mirror. She became human. It's a magic mirror. Okay, I'll keep rolling and I'll get it on the next watch. No, it's the power of sex.
It was the big O. I've
my
never...
favorite anime.
Yeah. There is something really special about a movie that's mechanics are so based upon orgasming. Like, it is genuinely... And, you know, for the gentleman that this movie is, it's all about her pleasure.
Absolutely.
You know? It's only when she orgasms that the transference of reality really happens, and I think ultimately my takeaway is that this is a feminist film.
Oh, absolutely, like Frankenhooker. And my takeaway is that if anyone's going to ring that bell, it's Gabriel Byrne. Holly as a human is Kim Basinger, who you might know as the Veronica Lake lookalike in LA Confidential, and she was on that episode of The Simpsons with Alec Baldwin.
Oh.
Sure, she's been in other things. Also, okay, so now let's ask the questions. How do they know this is what happens when Noids have sex with Doodles? And how do they know that it will cause problems? And does it serve any purpose to withhold this information from us for this long? Like, is anyone like, oh my God, that's why?
Yeah, this is in the spoiler section of the discussion.
But like, it's, as I kept noting, I was like, why aren't they telling us? Why aren't they telling us? And then they tell us, and I'm like, I don't know that it served any purpose to string us along like this.
Maybe if you were edging the whole movie.
Oh man. I don't.
Maybe the idea is that some horny asshole is like jerking it. Until that point in the movie, they're like, "Oh my God, if I come, it'll be real." And they boost you into the screen, and
now I'm
in Cool World.
I'm imagining some weird Findom version of this movie where it's like you pay an increasing amount for every 10 minutes. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get to see Holly's tits. I'm gonna get to see Holly's tits. It's like, then towards the end, it's like, oh yeah, now she's real, and I'm gonna still get to see them. And it's like, maybe this is just all bizarre fetish.
It kind of feels.
I mean, it is fetish stuff, like very surface level. It's fetish, but I mean, on a more devious. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just want.
I don't want to see any behind the scenes footage of what Bakshi was doing. That's all I'll say. I'll make this movie.
Frank goes to find Lynette. She's working at a club because apparently Cool World still is based in capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Not very cool World.
Yeah.
And Nails goes to man the phones. Brad Pitt gives a cartoon a very awkward back rub, and it is awful. Frank tells Lynette to put her arm around him, and I'm like, what does that feel like for you? Like, is that comforting in any way? Like, it just... I want this story of a man who just, like, has been here for 50 years and has had no real connection and is just desperately searching for, like, any sensation.
Honestly, I'm tempted to write some fan fiction. Like... There are a few movies where they are just they care so little about their premise that I am like desperate to rewrite the screenplay. I had that a little bit earlier. I'm not sure if it was the beginning of this year, or I think it was end of last year with Matrix 4.
Oh, I didn't see Matrix 4.
We don't have to talk about that.
Okay.
That's a lot to cover. I thought they were going somewhere like really cool that might have been like The Matrix again, and no, they just didn't. That's all I'll say.
Gotcha. So Sparks calls Nails and tells him that Holly and Deeb's fucked. Apparently this could cause a problem with the interworld matrix or something.
Oh,
Nails, yeah. The interworld matrix.
Yeah, different.
Nails tries to call Frank at the club, and we get my least favorite character, the screaming red telephone.
Okay. We literally said, this is our favorite character. And I will note, so this is an annoying character, but it's one of the most, at least like, coherently realized bits is that like a telephone is nervous about being rung, and being rung for them is like an active panic attack, so they're just like desperately trying to get picked up, which is kind of a funny bit. It is more, like I said, coherent than a lot of the other jokes in the movie.
It is. It's more. It's much more Roger Rabbit than any of the other stuff.
Yes.
And thinking about it that way, I definitely see it.
There is one, I was reading reviews from the time of the movie, and one of them like literally listed this phone as the only positive in the movie. They said, aside from an inspired moment with a nervous phone, this movie is a nightmare. And I really appreciated that.
And the review was titled, "But Who Was Phone?" The phone, it rings, it runs around screaming Frank's name until it finds him. Nails feels bad about interrupting Lynette and Frank snuggling, so he doesn't tell them that Holly has turned into a Noid, and he goes to solve the problem himself.
And while Nails is waiting for Frank to pick up the phone, he does chomp through an entire desk in about 3 bites.
Which made me think he was a termite on my first watch, but I guess he's just a spider.
Nope, just a spider who eats giant hunks of wood.
Have you ever been so nervous you ate a desk?
I mean, 4 times a week at least.
Oh, wow. Your desk budget is out of control. And this is my new reality show where I help people get their desk budgets under control. This is a backdoor pilot. Thank you for listening.
Help me, Brad. My desk budget is out of control.
What you need to do is stop eating them. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I can't do that.
Oh, shit. This never happened before.
I'm going to get a personal loan.
I love going to the bank. And I love saying, I need money to eat desks.
I always have to select other because they don't have 4 desks as one of the options.
4 desks per week.
My desk per diem.
Meanwhile, Holly just keeps looking at her human form in the mirror. And I guess all of Holly's clothes became real too, because she changes into some kind of uncomfortable jailbait outfit.
Yeah, she's really dressing beneath her age. It's to be. This transference is weird, and this is another thing where knowing the background makes a little more sense. Where Bakshi wanted somebody who was wanted a 20-year-old woman. She is not 20, but she is wearing a suspender skirt like she's 20.
Yes.
It feels awkward. It does not feel sexy in the way it is supposed to be. Not that that's what I'm coming to the movie for.
No, but it feels like it was supposed to be sexy to the worst kind of people.
Yeah.
She tells Jack she needs to go tell her terrible friends goodbye. And on her way out, she steals Deebs' fountain pen. On the street, Nails confronts Holly, who plans to go to the real world. Also, just here's where I realize this movie has a really uncomfortable anti-miscegenation side. Like, if you really want to, parse out the politics of, don't mix races or else you're going to disrupt reality.
That is interesting. That's definitely interesting.
I know it's not the point of the movie, and it's definitely something to be read into it, but still, it could be argued.
Bakshi's work in general is very, problematic. He often uses, very intense racial caricatures while trying to humanize those caricatures in a way that is really weird. So it's not, out of the realm of possibility for that being a theme that he's interested in.
Again, it's never done anything with. It doesn't go anywhere. There's no other evidence to point to and be like, yeah, no, this is what it means, because it ends up being a bad thing. Nails tries to stop Holly, but she sucks him up with the fountain pen, and Holly is awful, but at least she kills cops.
That's very good of her. Not Poppers. Oh, no, she kills Poppers, too.
She does!
Poppers and Poppers.
A woman. Oh, man. She drinks, she smokes, she murders the popo.
She sucks a detective into her pen.
Just like Ice-T rapped about.
The power of poetry.
The power of the pen is mightier than the sword, Ice-T. Also, we get our first instance of Holly's, I guess, it's a catchphrase, I guess. She calls people pencil dick.
I forgot about this. She's got a pen, but she's calling them pencil dicks.
Yep. Deebs embrace, and somehow they cross over to the real world. They wind up in Deebs' house, which is smoking on the outside. His neighbors, a mother and daughter, come to check in on them, and I guess at some point, these women established a relationship with this convicted murderer.
Yeah, they don't even establish if it's because they because there's a shot at the beginning when he is living at home for one of the first times, where there's like one of these women across the street looks at him in a way that is like kind of knowing, but we don't know if she recognizes him from like his job as a comic illustrator, or if it's because he's like lived there before and she's like, oh, he's back in town. Never established. They just kind of walk into their house as soon as they see something electrical happening. They're like, okay, we get to go in there.
We learned that neighbor daughter is a fan of Cool World, but it's never established that she actually realizes that this is Jack Deebs or whatever until later. He introduces the neighbors to Holly, who is punch drunk on reality, very giggly, very airheaded. And I like Kim Basinger's performance here. I thought she did pretty good as sort of ditzy.
It's funny, but it doesn't really make sense to me, because even though she is like very sexual, very femme fatale, there is genuinely something intelligent about her character in Cool World. She is like a very conscious manipulator, and she has like underlings who follow what she like commands them to do. So it is interesting, this like punch drunk on reality thing, where she's just like, oh, I'm real. Like, she can't have a conversation. It's not like they don't have conversations in Cool World. Like,
true.
She knows what conversations are, but the movie really wants to have this like fish out of water comedy moment where like, oh, she's in reality and she's overwhelmed, so she's like a bimbo now.
I hear you, especially because neither Deebs or Frank ever had that sort of reaction to being in Cool World.
Nope.
When their reaction to being in Cool World should be screaming madness.
Right.
And at least it's established that Holly has seen at least one Marilyn Monroe motion picture, so she knows, like, yeah, no, fuck this movie.
If anything, she knows more than they do about the real world. So yeah,
I wish they would have played that up where Holly has more information over Deebs and Frank than, or at least Deebs, because she can see through both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Back in Cool World, Frank arrives at Nails' murder site. Sparks tells Frank that Holly is now annoyed and she killed Nails, and we get my favorite line in the movie. This is going to be the biggest shitstorm the Cool World has ever seen. Not really. In a place that seems like everywhere is the Thunderdome every minute of the day, like I feel like it doesn't really affect anything.
No, there's a lot worse things than like this woman has another dimension now.
Deebs takes Holly somewhere where motherfucking Frank Sinatra Jr. is performing.
Yeah, I like that after like zorping back into this reality that he has not spent enough time in already in the movie, after, you know, like copulating with this doodle woman for the first time ever, his own creation, they're like, let's just go to the club.
Yeah, no, just like keep her in, like, here's a Pringle, here's a combo.
Right, especially when they're doing the fish out of water thing. They're not like, she's not like running around the house like, oh, it's a pot and it's a pan. And she's like, what is this, a drinking bowl? Oh, it's a toilet. Like, she just immediately after this scene, like, she still has a similar personality, but like now they're dressed up and they're like, I'm ready for some smooth lounge music. After that experience.
So, I was incredibly hung up on the fact that Frank Sinatra Jr. is in this movie.
Wait, it's literally Frank Sinatra Jr.?
Yes.
That wasn't a joke.
No.
Oh.
This is literally Frank Sinatra Jr. And, like, you didn't notice that it sounds pretty close to Frank Sinatra?
I mean, I'm not the biggest Frank Sinatra fan / listener.
Fair. I am a million years old.
I mean, I do want it my way every once in a while, but like that's just when I go to Burger King.
Ooh, I was about to make the joke, but I figured you were going there. But yes, it is literally Frank Sinatra Jr., and he does sound quite a bit like Frank Sinatra, and he looks a little bit like a rounder version of Frank Sinatra. So here's my thing. Is of Frank Sinatra's famous children, Frank Sinatra Jr. is probably the second tier under Nancy. And Frank Sinatra Sr. was alive at the time this movie came out. So I just kept imagining Frank Sinatra Jr. on sort of this never-ending quest, being like, "Hey, Pops, I'm in this movie. I'm in this movie with Kim Basinger. She grinds on me, Pops. You gotta see it. You gotta come to the premiere, Pops. I'm better than Nancy. I'm in the cool world."
And then he comes, and it's like a Hayao Miyazaki watching his son's movie for the first time kind of interaction.
I've not heard this story. Can you expound on that?
Oh, so Tales of Earthsea, which was Goro Miyazaki's first film directing, is very much it's about a son who kills his father, and Hayao was not a very present father for his childhood, like at all.
I can see that.
Basically neglected his kid so he could draw cartoons all day. I mean, I get it. We got to do it.
You got to make Totoros every day. You got to hit the streets and make Totoros.
You got to get on your Totoro grind. You're gonna make it in this industry. Ignore your children.
The message of my neighbor Totoro: ignore your children.
I mean,
kind of is
not the message, considering most of that movie is them being like, "Where the fuck are our parents?" They're just wandering in the woods. They're at a bus stop in the middle of the night, getting rained on. Doesn't matter.
I just also wanted to point out that Frank Sinatra Sr. lived 6 years longer than his son, and that's why he's the best.
Damn, that's rough. Yeah, basically the end of that story was that Hayao Miyazaki walked out of the movie and said that people should never make art that was that much about reality, and then didn't talk to his son for a few years after. So I'm imagining that happening when Frank Sinatra "This is my breakout role, Dad. Come to see me in cool world." and
I was in the Manchurian Candidate, you schmuck, and you're in the cool world with these cartoons. As his people just kick the shit out of his son in the Man's Chinese Theater parking lot.
Yes. He's like, "Dad, I thought this is what you meant by the Rat Pack. I'm hanging out with cartoon rats."
This one, Scabby Davis Jr. So we talked about Holly's personality a little bit, and you say we still see pretty much the same thing here. I feel like she flips, because before she was hanging all over Deebs, now they're in this lounge.
Now she's just like, "I gotta perform."
Well, now she's just like, "There's so many men here."
Right. The medium dick energy is too strong collectively.
The Vegas tourist dick energy.
You're right. I forget this movie is in Vegas somehow.
They sit, and Holly wants one of every drink, and when Deebs tells her she needs to slow down, she immediately flies off the handle. She's going to get everything she ever wanted, which, by becoming real, seems like she's off to a good start. And then she says that no man in here will say no to Holly. And of course that means she's going to storm Frankie Jr.'s stage. They perform Let's Make Love from the Marilyn Monroe movie. Deebs gets thrown out. He grabs one of the bouncers by the face and gives them some cartoon electricity.
Yeah.
Means nothing, amounts to nothing. Annoyed me a great deal.
I do like that the guy is just kind of reacts like he flicked his nose or something. It's just like he literally has an animated blue glow attached to him now, and he's just like, I'm gonna go inside now. Maybe use the washroom, get a look at the entertainment, maybe forget about this whole ordeal.
Let's go watch the stage crasher perform with Frank Sinatra Jr. You know, his dad wouldn't accept that, but that's why Frankie Jr.'s a man of the people.
This is what I came to the big city, Las Vegas, for.
A place where anything can happen. Outside, Deebs in his car flash back between being real and cartoon, but for some reason, Deebs' cartoon is some weird, puffy old man. Back in Cool World, Frank tells Lynette he needs to go to the real world to avenge Nails. Lynette's upset. They argue. Frank goes back anyway.
Yeah, this scene is also interesting because they established in the beginning that Brad Pitt was in the war and has PTSD, has flashback moments of terror.
That's right. We completely just forget about that.
Yeah, that doesn't come up again. Him and Lynette go on top of this building's roof in a very deliberate way. Like, this is where what they're about to do has to happen. And he's like, stand away from me. Like, I'm about to go Super Saiyan. And he visibly, like, a thought bubble appears above him. And he just, for some reason, must concentrate on the trauma. Not of war that he was having a flashback to for this scene, but the actual events of him crashing with his mother, which again is a little bit like an inception of trauma. Like, if you have a flashback to trauma, but in that moment you were currently dissociating because of a traumatic flashback, how do you dwell on that moment? Especially because this guy has not processed shit.
Obviously not. Because he's a man from the 1940s, and even if he were a man from 1992, he wouldn't. That was odd to me as well, because it was like, that seems like a surefire way to send you back to 1945, and not, for whatever reason, Jack Deebs' house, which is where he's going to end up.
Right. He concentrates on his mom crashing, and that gets him to Jack Deebs' house. And it's not like there's a specific portal in Jack Deebs' house. Like, he got into Cool World initially in prison.
Yes.
So it's not like they're using this one-way transportation. Initially, I thought, like, oh, this prison was, like, built close to that spot where, you know, Brad Pitt crashed. So this is, like, there's just, like, a thin place here between the real world and the Cool World that got ripped open. But no, he just thinks about his mom dying, and that gets him to the cartoonist's house. And I guess he's been easily going back and forth between the real world and this world this whole time. But
I mean, I would imagine when he first got there, he would have been thinking about his dead mother quite a bit and would have just gone back automatically. But I guess he's just like, nope, time to not fuck cartoons. But before Frank goes back to Deebs' house, Deebs and Holly are driving, and Holly sees an advertisement for the Union Plaza, Vegas Vinny's mythical hotel casino that has the spike atop it.
Yes.
And Holly literally kicks Gabriel Byrne out of the car so she can go get the spike.
Yeah.
Back at Deebs' house, the neighbor daughter sees that Deebs' house is lit up again. And here's where the movie starts to get really, really bad for me. Like, once everyone leaves Cool World and you don't have that Ralph Bakshi animation to, like, really just be like, that's a cool thing to see, it just becomes people running around. Like, literally.
Yeah, I mean, that's, at least when they're in Cool World, it has, like, the pacing and the aesthetics of that noir type of film where it's really just, like, about people having conversations, understanding more about the world as you come to, like, understand, you know, underground relationships people have, like, crime syndicate. It has that, like, feeling of a dark underground opening up, even if the movie doesn't, or the world doesn't make sense kind of inherently. And then when they go to the real world, it's fucking Vegas. Like, there's nothing to discover. They are just running around.
But no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I didn't process it that way, but you're right. Like, with Cool World, there's always this expectation, like, yeah, this is all going to come together, and there's going to be this great lore and this great world building, and then you're like, oh, so no to that, and I guess we're hoping to run into Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau and swingers out here.
Yeah. The last third of this movie really feels like a Mystery Science Theater movie, if that makes sense.
Like a bad movie.
There is a specific quality to good Mystery Science Theater covered movies, though, where
a cheesy movie.
Right, where there's just like a lack of care for like the world and atmosphere, but there's enough, like, people are like flailing and gesticulating enough where it's like because the background is so blank, you get and the cogs working in the background are so broken, it just is funny to see people try to make a story out of this.
Yeah, no, people are trying. People are, especially Brad Pitt, who is eventually stopped selling his lines. I don't know what the filming order of this, but there's a part where I noted he just stopped trying to sell.
He really is just kind of like, they're doing the cold read. And he's like, you know what? I think you got it. Like he's just arguing with Bakshi, and he's like, no, that's my character. That's how my character read it.
My character just doesn't give a shit about this anymore.
Yeah.
Deebs returns home and runs into Frank. Deebs implores Frank to shoot him, and this is a scene where two gentlemen are doing their best to act the shit out of it, and like Gabriel Byrne's like, shoot me, just shoot me. Brad Pitt does this thing. He does it a couple times. I think he only does it to Gabriel Byrne. I think he solely does it to fuck with Gabriel Byrne, where like interrupts him. He's like, don't test me. Well, like, it's so awkward, and it felt like such a choice.
Or I'll shoot you. And it's like, that's what he's asking you to do. Like, what is the energy? Like, what do you both want in this scene?
I got the sense that neither of these actors were on set with each other because we don't see them together. It's always shot, reverse shot, which makes things harder and makes you maybe want to sell a little bit harder.
Yeah, from their perspective, they really only have like 2 or 3 scenes together because they have that scene in the bar together, right?
Yes.
Where he's like, don't fuck her. Don't do it. And then
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you're going to put your wiener in her kitty cat.
It's 2D. That's not how it works. Just go home.
Here, I got this block puzzle that's going to show you how it doesn't work. Frank sees Deebs switch between Noid and Doodle. The neighbor daughter busts in. Deebs tells everyone that Holly is headed to the Union Plaza Casino to get the spike and meet Vegas Vinny.
Still don't know why.
Because he's a legend. He's the Doodle who made it. But
like Holly like has what she wants. I mean, like, I know they're like zorping in between these single frames of, I don't even know what they are. They aren't their cartoon version, their doodle version of themselves. They're just random caricatures. I don't understand what they have to do with the characters themselves.
I don't either, because Holly sort of transforms into this like Marge Simpson modest clown.
Yeah.
Doodle. And I was like, I felt like Bakshi was like, what's a sort of doodle that no one would be attracted to? But here's the thing, Ralph Bakshi, not prescient enough to see Clussy supremacy.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't stand on the shoulders of a tall enough giant.
He should have talked to Kojima. Kojima would have known.
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah.
You think Kojima foresaw the rise of clown girls?
I think so.
Do you think that's the weapon to surpass Metal Gear is just Clussy?
Yeah, I think that's it. And ultimately, I think that's what caused the Death Stranding as well.
Probably. I think him going too far with the Clussy is what's caused the botch job on Phantom Pain, where that the entire ending was just about hot clown girls.
And made Silent Hills get canceled.
Yes. Guillermo del Toro was actually put off by how much Kojima was just about clown girls, and he was like...
And it's hard to put him off.
Yeah, no, he likes fish people. Fucking Paddington's mom.
He definitely has like a 1-to-1 fish vaginal canal replica somewhere in his house amongst all those curios and that cream shit.
I hope so. I hope so for just austerity's sake, like so future generations can revere it. And neighbor daughter offers her mother's car to help these two older men, one who is a complete stranger and the other who is a convicted murderer,
go shoot me.
Go to do something. Like this sounds
the strip.
This sounds like Nocturnal Animals. This sounds like some weird adjacent project where it's just like, you shouldn't get in that car. Bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, and they were like, if Jake Gyllenhaal goes blind at the end of this, that's going to be good for us. So
Holly arrives at the plaza and goes searching for Vegas Vinny. I am going to briefly touch on the very awkward shtick she has with the valet, but I'm not going to explain it. It's so weird that I have to touch on it, but it's not worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Frank says that Vegas Vinny is based on a character we saw 6 hours ago, Doc Whiskers.
Mm-hmm.
They also realize how the balance between Cool World and the real world could be disrupted, but they still let Frank stay in Cool World and Doc Whiskers go to the real world.
Yeah. I don't know.
Again, it makes no sense, and it's frustrating because there are good things about. I always say it's not a especially insightful comment, but the most frustrating movies aren't bad movies. They're movies where it's like, you could have been so good. Mm-hmm. You could have been so good if you just made sense or tried, or you didn't get the Poltergeist bros to be like, what if Craig T. Nelson were here?
And I am disappointed in you as a child. My child watching this movie.
Holly gets ejected from the casino, and here's another rabbit hole I went down. Mm-hmm. Because I was watching on Amazon and I had the X-ray, I saw that one of the bouncers ejecting Holly, the actor is a gentleman named Big Yank.
Big Yank.
Big Yank.
Oh, we love Big Yank.
I love Big Yank, and I tried to find out more information about Big Yank. But the most comprehensive information I could find on him was courtesy of the Rocky Wiki, like the wiki for the franchise Rocky.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if anything on there was real. So I don't want to be like, yeah, let me tell you the story of Big Yank. And I'm talking about someone who had a cameo in Rocky 3 in one of the Rocky video games.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was my Big Yank rabbit hole.
Nice.
Holly is met by a film noir Jawa. Just this short man in a trench coat and a hat, scarf around his face. Holly literally shakes him down when he betrays that he knows she's a doodle. And he's revealed to be Doc Whiskers. Oh, how surprising when Brad Pitt just said that.
I still don't understand this reveal. Like, I don't know why he's living in secret. I don't know why he's Vegas Vinny. I don't know why this is...
Is he actually Vegas Vinny, or is this some weird Cool World myth where it's like Whiskers went over that? Because
he said that he tried to remove the spike, but it was too hard. And isn't his name like Vince or Vincent or something?
It's Vincent Whiskers. But it's implied that he tried to become annoyed for a while, but he couldn't hold it, having trouble staying in form. So he's like, it's impossible.
I was more imagining that he couldn't get laid.
Maybe. No, this is the movie we need. We need Doc Whiskers. We need Doc Whiskers super bad.
It's just him trying to navigate Tinder. Is really what it is.
I have a 2D penis, and I like to create spikes.
It's really special to imagine that, like, raunchy R-rated Doc Whispers getting laid comedy.
Like, I picture, again, to go back to video games, like a Leisure Suit Larry.
Uh-huh. Oh, he's like a perfect... You could literally... Like, someone needs to make that mod.
Absolutely.
With Doc Whiskers. It'll be a huge hit.
Absolutely. All the Cool World fans, all the Leisure Suit Larry fans who also download mods for those games, specifically about Cool World.
Yeah.
Holly affirms that she will reach the spike and uses the fountain pen to pop Doc Whiskers just as Deebs, Frank, and the young woman arrive. Frank tells Deebs to stay behind and tend to Whiskers while Frank goes after Holly, and they chase each other, and they chase each other, and they chase each other. And did you care ever?
It has moments where it's like cool, and then moments where you're like, can we please just get out of this hallway? Like, you're just standing here. Why are you just standing here? We're in the climax of this movie. Like, this is a chase.
I never felt like engaged, or like at points I was like, oh, something happening, but mostly I was just like, we're 20 minutes from the end, and I was just like, I wish this were over. At this point, I was done. I gathered all my stuff, and I was like, let's pack it in.
I kind of like Brad Pitt touching his hand over the, like, ephemeral fake cartoon wall. I don't know why it's ephemeral or fake. And then getting kicked in the nuts by a cartoon foot that comes through a door. And I like Holly trying to do the same thing again in her cartoon form and go through a wall, which for some reason makes you a ghost. I don't know. And then she slams into a wall. I found that enjoyable. It was more enjoyable in the trailer, where it was cut with some kind of urgency, but a nice moment. I guess it's a nice moment, at least, her slamming into the wall for me.
I enjoyed that, but I don't care about any of these characters.
No.
None of these characters have really been developed. Somehow, the most developed character is Frank. At least he has a reason to be doing what he's doing.
Right.
Avenging his partner, and it's insane because Frank was an add-in character just to make a role for Brad Pitt.
Right.
And it's like, how do you... Oh, maybe they should have done a second draft of the script. Maybe that's it.
Oh, that would be good. Maybe they should have done a first one, actually.
Oh! Elyse with the zingers.
Damn. They only did a half draft.
I love going down to the pub, getting a half draft. But here's my thing. We're not the end. But close to the end, here's my takeaway. If Ralph Bakshi had held out 4 more years, I bet we could have gotten Ralph Bakshi's Space Jam.
Oh, shit.
If he guarded his talent a little bit, and he was like, no, I'm not going to make Cool World, but I'm going to sort of cultivate my clout. And then it's like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny, a rap co-written by Jay-Z. This has Ralph Bakshi written all over it.
A lot of potential.
I just got a very hard image of Ralph Bakshi at his animating desk with the already recorded Space Jam soundtrack just on his Walkman, just like, come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. And he's just like making the best work of his life from the Quad City DJs.
Do you think he would self-insert himself as Wayne Knight's character?
I know you're going to say Bill Murray, as if Ralph Bakshi were like a big enough celebrity. Everyone knows who Ralph Bakshi is and what he looks like.
I mean, to be fair, when I was a kid watching Space Jam, I had no idea who the fuck Bill Murray was.
I probably didn't either, honestly.
I was like, who is this guy? Why is everybody cheering?
Everybody in the audience was cheering. They were on their feet, standing ovation. They had to stop the projection to allow the audience to, like, it was like Cons, just a 12-minute ovation, just when he says, don't point that thing at me, and everybody. Holly tries to escape through the wall. She does it once, but can't do it again. She goes out into the balcony. On the ground, Whiskers has been put back together. Thank God, this beloved character is well again. Holly scales the side of the building. Frank tells her to get down. Holly asks for help. Surprising nobody, it's a ruse, and Holly pushes Frank off the side of the building, and he plunges to his death.
Yep, it is just a straight up. It is like a classic Hollywood fall. Like that man is just falling from a skyscraper.
I'm surprised they didn't use the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, and he slams his head into. I mean, you don't see it, but his brains are like splattered out. Like he's a fucking dead man.
I don't know quite why, but here's where I started hating this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Holly drops her pen, it breaks. Oh, now I remember why. Whisker says to Jack, "This is your chance to make it right."
Yep, this is
Fuck
definitely
you.
the worst. This is the worst.
Fuck you. And this is a phrase I'm going to be saying a lot because, one, Jack really didn't do anything wrong. He didn't know what was going to happen. He was just like, I'm going to have sex with this hot cartoon lady.
Yeah. You can
And
at least
two-
tell me why.
Yeah,
you
and
didn't even tell him why he can't fuck her.
exactly. And two, this is the most unearned thing I've ever seen in a movie where it's just like, we need to end it. We need to end it, so we just need to say words.
You're a
And
superhero now.
Jack goes, it's time to do something right. And I mean, he made one of the world's most popular comic books, but also he is a murderer. I don't know. Either way, doesn't work. Deebs gets Palpatine lightning hands,
Mm-hmm.
and his arms stretch to the top of the casino, and he pulls himself up. And here's where the rage reaches maximum, because the neighbor daughter says, he's going to kill himself. And Whisker says, he's fulfilling his destiny. He's becoming a hero.
I wish he would have just jumped. It would have been a better ending. He's becoming a hero right next to Frank.
Doc Whiskers has met this man for like 5 minutes. Let's also underline that.
Not even. They just like watched Brad Pitt go into a hotel, and then he just tells him to be a hero.
This is some George Lucas writing. George Lucas watched Cool World, and then he wrote the entire prequel trilogy. No, it's infuriating. Like it's like I wish I could laugh about it like you, but it's too traumatizing. It's so inept. It's just like the Poltergeist guys were like, oh man, if we don't finish the script today, then we have to come in tomorrow. So let's just write words.
Yeah.
Holly gets the spike, and when she pulls it out and unleashes the last cool thing in this movie, it's a bunch of spooky, semi-translucent strands of faces.
Mm-hmm.
And this might also be happening in Cool World. I was unclear.
It doesn't happen in that like chain that it does, but those faces will like randomly kind of hover around in those nonsensical like foreground animations in Cool World.
Gotcha. But in the real world, these entities invade Vegas. Holly pops back and forth between Noid and Doodle, but her original Doodle, for whatever reason now.
Yeah.
And she stays in her original Doodle form.
Mm-hmm.
Deebs comes up and touches her, and now we say goodbye to Gabriel Byrne.
Yep, because no part of him exists for the rest of the movie.
He becomes not his voice, no, because he becomes a big muscular cartoon superhero man, and he is now voiced by Maurice LaMarche again. Not again, but doing another voice. Yeah. And I wonder if they made Gabriel Byrne try to do like a superhero voice.
Yeah. Didn't go well.
I can't imagine it would. Like, I don't even want to like try to do an impression because it's just.
This character feels like a holdover from Mighty Mouse. It seems definitely like Bakshi was just like, I don't know. What if Mighty Mouse was not a mouse and he was just Mighty Man? I guess he just gets to be Mighty Man, sure.
Which we didn't mention before, but part of Bakshi's reemergence into the cultural landscape was his reimagining reboot of Mighty Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels so far removed from his original vision that this feels like Poltergeist guys to me.
Mm-hmm.
We're just like, oh yeah, cartoons, superheroes. We know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we need to end this so we can go do coke. Holly kicks Super Deebs in the balls. Did you enjoy it this time too?
Yeah.
Okay. Holly seems not to be upset that she is destroying the real world, even though this is all she wanted to get to.
She wanted to be real, and she's a doodle again. She's like, I love being a fascist doodle dictator. That's a fun phrase. Those words
it is.
Fascist doodle dictator?
It sounds like a super spicy, like, Cheeto.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to control your taste buds. Super Deebs catches the spike with his feet in a thing. As the entities storm Las Vegas, they turn real people into doodles. Lots of cartoon chaos, which is kind of fun, but at the same time, I just wanted to be over.
It's also, like, not creative enough. Like, I kind of wanted there to be more, like, body horror, like, elements to the cartoon, like, invasion, the cartoon apocalypse. But it's, like, mostly people who, it's just, like, here's a heavier set woman, and now she's, like, a heavier set female chicken. And you're like, okay.
Yeah,
I guess. Some people seem bothered by this transformation, and other people just ignore it.
Yeah, like, the closest thing we get to what you're talking about is two women sitting next to each other, the slot machines. One turns into a cartoon caricature of an obese person, and the real woman looks over at her and screams, presumably because it's a cartoon, and then vice versa happens when the other woman turns into a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
But no one seems really that bothered that they're cartoons.
No.
Which, again, give me the John Carpenter in the Mouth of Madness going insane. Yeah. Like, it's a cartoon. This isn't real. I'm witnessing a 2D space in my 3D mind. And
100%. And this is something they, like, again, already did in Roger Rabbit, but they're, like, smartly, they, like, toned it down and made it, like, a person who is, like, underneath, you know, a cartoon as that stuff's kind of, like, coming out of them. So it's, like, more controlled by the reality around them. I feel like they bit off more than they could chew with this ending. To be, like, it just felt like there's a couple of, like, semi-wide shots of, like, it's always just, like, two people, and then they're just like, whoa, there's a cartoon character. Yeah. And then the neighbor daughter, is it the neighbor daughter or the neighbor?
It is the neighbor daughter. Well, the neighbor mother does turn into, like, a chicken lady briefly, and then the neighbor daughter has the same, like, weird 1940s animation that...
Yeah, she turns into, like, Tintin or something.
Like a Blondie strip, like a character from a Blondie strip. Nails leaks out of the fountain pen. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Super Deebs has a big cartoon fight, which just isn't as interesting as it should be. Holly confronts him, asks him for the spike. He's about to give it to her, but then I didn't understand this at all. No. A cartoon shadow ink monster that looks like Nails says something, and then Holly calls them pencil dicks, and Super Deebs is like, I should get this spike back where it belongs, and do you know what happens here?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just making sure that after honestly, 2 watches...
I don't even want to spend the energy to try and unravel it. Like,
I agree. It's not worth... I'm not going to spend any more energy than the Poltergeist dudes did, which was 0. So he does return the spike, and this is a nitpick that does not need to be mentioned, but still bothered me. Even though he plugged up this hole, all the evil tunes are still sucked back in somehow. That's not how things work. But the people of Vegas become undoodled.
Yeah.
Neighbor daughter is distraught that Deebs is gone. Love this relationship. So deep, so well established. Like, oh man, they could have had a, I don't know how old this girl
They
is.
could have had a platonic relationship together.
He could have taught her how to make a shiv.
He could have showed her how to draw a horse.
That's what every young woman needs, is just an older man, a platonic older man, to come into her life, teach her how to draw a horse. Doesn't have to be a photorealistic horse. Could be stylized, but it just has to be a horse.
I believe this was the plot of The Last of Us.
Joel was taking Ellie on a trip to see a horse, so she had a model to work off of.
I'm gonna teach you something, Ellie. I'm gonna teach you. I'll take you all the way to Colorado. We're gonna see a horse.
Joel, Ellie possibly contains the cure, but if we operate on her, she'll forget what a horse looks like. Oh, no! Nails cries over Frank. He wants to take Frank's body back. Nails, Corpse Frank, and Whiskers go back to Cool World, where the typical shit is going on, except this time it's a bizarre Mexican caricature for no reason. Maybe Lynette is supposed to be Hispanic, like a film noir dark lady or something, or a Western dark lady. She finds Frank's body literally tossed on their front stoop.
Yeah, like the mob wanted them to find it.
Like, Sonny Corleone just beating the shit out of Carlo Rizzi and just leaving him on the street. Lynette cries. Nails tells Lynette that Holly did it. Lynette asks if she was a doodle when she did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she was. Plot twist out of nowhere, never been established.
Before you reveal the plot twist, I just want to say, Nail says he saved the day. And I wonder where he gets this interpretation, because from my perspective, he went to the real world and then got pushed off a building and died. He literally had no effect on the story. And Nails also wasn't there for it because he was in a fucking pen.
Here's the thing, is that was what I was about to bring up, is Nails doesn't know. So he's just spreading. This is much like Sandman. It's a story about stories and the myths and the tales we tell.
I had a Sandman joke written down on my notes that I forgot at work. But it had to do, I wish I could remember the specifics, so I'll just tell you the basic premise of it, because I think it's funny. You know how Sandman lapses into these like mythological stories from ages past that involve the Sandman, like fucking a woman somewhere? I'm just saying, if you made Jack Deebs the Sandman, and this is his and I would love to see the Sandman as his doodle Sandman in the doodle world, and people but he's just innately from it, but he's really just there to fuck someone. That would
be fantastic. So let's get to not the most infuriating part. I already talked about the most infuriating part for me, but the dumbest part of this movie, where it turns out that if a Noid is killed by a doodle, they become a doodle.
I just why didn't they just say it? You could have just said it. You're doing all this exposition dump at the beginning. Just fucking say it at the beginning.
Sneak it in there.
They sneak it in there, and then at the end, if somebody remembers it, good on them. You solved the puzzle box. Brad Pitt isn't dead yet.
But also it's how do they know this? When has this happened before? And Brad Pitt turns into the worst looking cartoon in the movie. And I think we were talking about before with Neighbor Daughter, they were trying to ape a sort of 1940s style because he was from the 40s, but it literally looks weird and lazy, and obviously films aren't made, I don't know about animated films in sequence, but it feels like they're just whatever. We only need 4 lines for a face.
Right. It definitely feels like they were like just trying to finish the movie.
Yes. I know the feeling.
And the way they portray it is such a happy ending. He's like, babe, I'm a doodle now, we can walk. Is basically how the scene goes. And he's not like, oh my god, like, it doesn't matter. Like, what if you fucking break up with this woman? Like, this is in a cosmically horrifying experience to wake up as this being.
And then, not just to be a cartoon, but then have to live in, again, the violent, nightmarish hellscape that is Cool World, that seems to exist of this one Judge Dredd-esque megacity.
Yeah. That's obviously like the family style storytelling being like Frankenstein's monstered onto the horrific setting designed for a horror movie aspect of it, which makes it even like more bizarre. Like there's nothing to fucking live for here.
No.
Like, especially if you have like human consciousness. Like I know he's adjusted to it, but like how can this be a happy ending for anyone? It's literally one woman. I don't even think cartoons die unless there's a pen involved, and even then if the pen breaks, they just seep out of it.
They don't, at least not permanently, because that's something Brad Pitt mentions earlier. He's like, I don't want to go to the real world. In the real world, it hurts. You can die, and it's permanent.
Right, so not only is he in this, like, new, like, transmogrified form, he is literally here for eternity. How is that not fucking horrifying? He's just like, hey, we get to live in this shitty apartment forever.
Hey, I never fucked it. I haven't fucked for 60 years. Now I get to, and I'm a cartoon.
Like, this man is like the type of man who thinks marriage will save him and then thinks children will save his marriage. Like, this shit is gonna be eternal? God. What a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. There should have been some sort of Graduate-esque moment where they're like, just sort of like pausing and looking off into the middle distance. But then we get the real tragic ending of the movie, where we get our last look at Super Deebs and Holly, who have somehow become trapped in a comic book panel or a full comic book. It's not clear, but Super Deebs is very excited, and Holly once again gets out her catchphrase and calls him a pencil dick.
This is actually the one thing I like about the ending.
Okay.
Because I like that Holly's punishment, I like that Holly's punishment is domesticity. Like, having to follow through with this, like, not that I can't think of the right word, but like, the fact that she has to like be in a relationship with this person, and a person who is like even more oblivious, even more airheaded, even more like, I'm an important masculine man. I find that kind of an interesting punishment, especially when the movie just kind of showed that domesticity as like the ultimate reward with Brad Pitt's character.
Yeah, that is sort of interesting. My only thing is like, is that accidental? Is that like that's always the thing, is like, how far are you meeting the movie?
Who knows? We'll never know.
We won't.
Go
ahead.
I would love to talk to anyone who worked on this movie, though. Like, literally anyone. Everybody's got to know something.
I want to talk to. Yeah, no, I'd love to. Maybe on this, I know there's a 25th edition. No, it would be 20th anniversary edition, Blu-ray, 4K, whatever edition of this movie
30th.
Coming out. 30th, Jesus.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll have some special feature. I don't think I'll buy the movie, but maybe it will exist.
I would buy it if it had director's commentary.
I'd be tempted to.
Yeah.
Elyse, is there anything else you'd like to say about The Cool World?
I just think it's a really cool movie. If you're Mormon, you should watch it. I just
Yes.
feel like it'll really work for you.
Joseph Smith's words have never been clearer to me as when I watched Cool World.
Nor more faithfully adapted.
Exactly.
When you become, a planet ruling deity, or when I become a planet ruling deity, because it's gonna happen to me, I'm gonna remake Cool World in my image. And it's gonna be a great time, and you're all welcome to come.
I can't wait. Well, thank you. Next week, it's possible Billy might be back. He was supposed to be back with us tonight. I didn't mention that, but he is still gone. Next week, I will be talking to Brendan Jesus, who I did the original version of the show with, and we will be talking about We're All Going to the World's Fair. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Elyse, for being with us.
Of course.